When art becomes functional through design or craftsmanship, it becomes real. My goal as an industrial designer is to take everyday objects, tools, in this case computers, and infuse them with art. And my hope is by doing this, I'll pass down some of the passion and creativity from my process to the new user. My name is Josh Sniffen, and I am not from Concentrate. I got my start building computers in high school. I was just kind of fixing grandma's viruses and building really low-end systems. I had a system that I was pretty proud of myself, but I didn't really understand what computer modding was until I went to this LAN party in Oregon called PDX. We drove down there and I was blown away from the moment that I opened those doors. I knew instantly what I wanted to do. Immediately, I started modding. For several years after that, I would be going to all the LAN parties in North America, building mods for all the competitions there. And I learned a lot. I went through a lot of material. But I was becoming drained because I had this passion. I wanted to do this full time, but it was becoming more and more clear that I was not going to be able to. I got a cold blackmail. So I spent a month on this particular mod, and it had completely drained me. Financially, emotionally. I was working 3 different minimum wage jobs. All the money was going to bills, a little bit to food, and the rest into this mod. And I flew halfway across the US. It was unfinished, and I placed really low down the totem pole. And the reason that's important is when you're doing this full time, or you're thinking that you're doing this full time, you're trying to kind of win to get the prizes to kind of offset your cost. Either the parts are going to go into your next computer, or there's going to be some cash that might help fund your next computer. But after I had lost for the 10th contest, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know how to do this anymore. And I just kind of sat down with that realization that I wasn't going to be able to make my dreams happen. It sounds kind of cheesy, but that's how I felt. And something kind of clicked and went off. I was like, well, why not ask for help? I put streamline shoes on my feet. At first, I got turned down. I got turned down by a lot of the vendors there. A lot of them were nice about it, but they were busy and they have their own stuff going on. But I walked over to the Sapphire table, and I regret that they were the last people I talked to, because immediately the rep there was like, yeah, I would love to see your work. So he walks over with me, and he truly liked the piece. He truly spent the time and looked at the details and commented on it, and I think that was the first time someone had actually really done that, and I was completely floored. It was Sapphire. I mean, this is a big company. They see a lot of good projects. And they said, yeah, Josh, we would love to do a mod with you. And I was just walking on air. And that's really how I got my break from being this a hobby to doing this full time. I really owe it to Philip from Sapphire for getting me started. They've always been super eager to serve me as a modder, a gamer, a business person. And so I was really excited to be able to serve them with this project. I'm hoping that if I document the process, that it might encourage other people to start modding and scratch building just as I was inspired early on. Now that I finished my CAD model, it's time to go to work picking out the materials. I'm going to start with the wood because it's one of the prominent features of my design, but being that I've never worked with wood before, I don't even know where to start. I do like working with new materials for the first time. It's exciting, it's fun, but it's also frustrating. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that we can find something that I like. So unlike the wood, picking out the aluminum was extremely easy because I already have a ton of 6061T aluminum all throughout my house and my shop. I use this material for many of my projects, including my Jeep, because of how strong it is. So this is basically aircraft grade aluminum. It is extremely strong. It's pretty firm. Usually when you're like bending and folding, you want to use something softer, like 50-52. But we're not really bending a lot of it. Just that one PSU bracket, and that's going to be a challenge. I don't have that figured out quite yet. It's going to look pretty good when it's done. As for the wood, I decided to start looking at some of the national store chains to see what they might have. After spending half a day looking around, it became apparent that I wasn't going to find anything exotic or unique, which is what I really want for this project. I decided to get smart and call some experts up, aka furniture shop owners. And eventually I found a furniture shop that might carry some of the exotic woods I'm looking for. So I'm off to the Dado Family Clan Furniture Store to see what they might have. When I got there, I have to admit I was not prepared. I didn't even have a tape measure, and I hadn't anticipated what I actually need to know to pick out wood. Apparently it's extremely different from species to species, and my confusion must have been apparent wandering around in a 100+ degree warehouse looking through stacks of wood, because several patrons actually stopped and offered some friendly advice and words of wisdom.
It's the first cut. If you get something that the grain pattern's about like this all the way through, that would look better.
Ooh, look at that knot down there. It has a great color to it, but I just do not like that straight grain. You want your cigars to smell like anything, it's that. Also manuring. Healthy mix of Spanish cedar and manure. But a purple and silver, purple wood and silver would look amazing. I eventually settled on something that I thought was striking. It's called Purple Heart, and I picked it out because it's actually purple. It's purple! I have never seen a purple wood before, and I mean, it is really, really purple. Not only that, it comes in planks wide enough to where I could actually cut the side panel out of a single piece without having to glue it together. The staff was extremely helpful. They cut my plank down for me and they even planed it. And I was totally happy with the wood, looking it up on Wikipedia and reading all about it on the way home. One of the things they mentioned was that it was an extremely hard wood, and I didn't really know how difficult it would be to work with until I got started. But on the ride home, I was happy that after several hours, I finally found something that would look perfect for my build. So after I had picked out my materials, it was time to turn them into parts. Usually I'd use a table saw, a router, and a file, but because of my deadline, I didn't have time for that. I set aside a day to go find someone to help me out. I went to various machine shops, a welder shop, and even a shipyard, and eventually I found a place called Accurate Edge in Gulfport. Accurate Edge does water jet cutting, which is the process of using extremely high pressurized water with an abrasive to cut parts that are extremely thick. I actually don't know what a water jet can't cut out, as they were cutting through 6-inch plate steel when I got there. Not everybody who'll be watching this has access to all the tools I do in my shop, And to just make a completely level playing ground with people that are thinking about doing this project themselves, I wanted to give them access to something that everybody has, and that's partners. You're going to be able to find a CNC mill, a water jet, a laser, somewhere that you can ship your parts to have cut. So that's what I decided to do. Accurate Edge turned out to be a slam dunk for me. We got there early in the morning, and the guys were just super friendly. They let me film, which is of course important to this project, but they also went the extra mile cutting the parts out. First we start with some demo pieces to make sure that the water jet wasn't going to damage them. Once I was satisfied with the cuts, they handed them off. Putting in the extra effort to find a local relationship was perfect. I love Accurate Edge, I love the guys there, and I'm definitely going to be coming back. And it's really awesome when local businesses, pull together and they help each other out like they did today. So I'm really grateful for that experience. So far, I've really stepped outside my comfort zone for this Sapphire build. Not only am I working with challenging materials, but I did a bunch of footwork trying to find people to help me. With how powerful technology and logistics are, it's easy to do the majority of a project stuck behind a screen. I know that when I look at the finished mod, I'm going to see the adventures I had getting to where it is, and the people behind it. I'm proud that technology took a backseat to relationships that help keep my project on time and done right. The next stage of this project is to get my pieces powder coated, and keeping in the spirit of doing things local, I know just where to get this done. Alright, what do we got? This is the... So it's already pretty cool that this build is sponsored by Sapphire and AMD, but it's even cooler that they let me pick out which GPU I wanted. And I went with the 290X because it's wicked fast while balancing power consumption. And this means that I can use a physically small power supply, which gives me more design freedom in the sculpture. If there's one downside to the 290X, it would be the noise, but luckily Sapphire has several cooling solutions to choose from. I went with the Tri-X card, and by the size of the heat pipes and sheer surface area of the fins, I expect it to be whisper quiet. I'm going to be changing a couple things up, just the color really, to kind of more fit in the style of my theme. But man, gorgeous card. So when I was designing this build in the computer, in my head I was envisioning the aluminum parts being bead blasted and then anodized. Leave it there and go anodize it myself, I will, but you guys definitely can sandblast it.
Yeah. Well, I know that, hell man, you want to, you know what, I mean, they got all kind of anodized looks. Yeah. In there, unless you just want anodized.
I'm a huge fan of powder coating. It's a process where you electrostatically charge little particles of plastic, which then adhere to your metal parts after grounding them. And then you just bake it on. So it's like a plastic enamel, but you can make it look like anything. I'm still going to have them bead blasted, but I think I'm going to do a satin powder coat on them instead. This will kind of give it a nice clear but soft finish while still having the kind of elemental nature of the aluminum. I've taken mini computer parts to IPC powder coating before because the guys there are just great. Mike and Chris understand the critical nature of my work, and they will not settle for anything less than show quality. As modders, we want everything to be color coordinated, but we shouldn't really purchase hardware based on colors alone, especially when we can just modify that ourselves. So I'm going to get started modifying this Sapphire card. Right now it already looks pretty cool. It's a pearl yellow and black, and this could fit in with a lot of different color builds, but it's not going to work for mine. I started by taking it apart, and I gotta say I was pretty impressed because this thing was put together entirely with screws. There weren't any little plastic clips that break off during disassembly. This was great because I was able to easily get it apart for painting. I want a clear, natural looking aluminum, so I need to strip the black dye. To do this, I'm going to use an industrial strength cleaner called Grease Lightning. I've used this stuff before to remove dye from some of my tools just for fun, but since I don't have time to do a lot of scrubbing, I'm going to leave my parts in there a little longer than I usually do. Hopefully when I come back to the parts, all the dye will be removed by itself. While those parts are stripping, I'm going to work on the fans. I don't really want them to be this black color that they were before. I want them to have a silvery hammer tone finish to kind of fit in with the rest of the build. Now if I just spray them right away, it's going to look pretty bad and it might peel and chip. So I'm actually going to have to sand it for a bit first, scuff up the surface, use a primer, and then finally finish up with my hammer tone spray. I usually modify power supplies quite a bit to integrate them in the build, but for this reason, and don't ask me why, I actually kind of want it to look like a power supply. It's still kind of boring though, and I need to integrate it into the mod, so I'm going to paint it and add a little grill to it. I started by hacking the old punch out for the fan guard first with a Dremel. Then I used a file to clean up the edges. I have a really ugly fan grill that's 80 millimeters, and again, I don't know why I have this laying around. It's exactly what I need to make the power supply look like a power supply, but not be as boring as it is. Drilling the acrylic was very difficult for multiple reasons. Firstly, I was just stressed out over the piece because if that piece cracks, we're done, and that's the end of the mod. Marvel Mystery Oil. And acrylic is extremely, especially the stuff I'm working with, that cell cast acrylic, it's extremely hard. And you can go through drill bits like no other. And even with my cobalt drill bits, I had to take it real slow and use lots of lubricant. And if I didn't, it would end up burning the acrylic, and it would make these little swirl marks in it, and it'd be white, and it would just not look good, and I could damage the piece permanently. And I wanted to have it be clear and smooth like glass on the inside of my drill bit, kind of like magnifying the bolt when it goes in. Because this is a main feature of the chassis, is that back part. So lots of oil, kept it cool, kept the bit sharp, and kept the acrylic from cracking. 19 hours. It took 19 hours for the CNC to cut out that bevel. It's a lot of cutting time for that very subtle part. And it took me probably 9 hours to set the CNC machine up. It was worth it in the end though. It really takes a completely different life than just a flat board. I mean, a flat board, you cut it out and it's boring and just a board it can just do with a router. But with that bevel, it really makes the piece.